The UK manufacturing sector is at a turning point, adapting to rapid changes in technology, sustainability, and economic challenges. Manufacturers and distributors alike are rethinking their strategies to stay competitive while ensuring long-term growth. With supply chain disruptions and increasing costs, the industry is embracing new approaches to production, staff training, and resource management. In today's programme, Executive TV will explore the sector, gaining expert insight from manufacturers, distributors, and training providers. Alliance Industrial Doors manufacture, supply and install industrial doors, rollers and shutters for businesses across the UK.
Well, the history of Alliance Industrial Doors is predominantly, it was started up in 1999 by our Managing Director, Mr. John Eakes. He predominantly worked in the industry since 1970, and unfortunately in 1999 he got made redundant. He'd been working for prominent door companies, and then he thought to himself, well, why can't I start a business myself? And he basically decided he could make doors better, better priced, better door solutions for the industry.
The East Kilbride and District Group Training Association, EKGTA for short, provides apprenticeship training for the mechanical and electrical engineering industries in Scotland.
EKGTA's history goes back to 1964 with the creation of something called the Industrial Training Act, and that was something the government of the day introduced to assist the engineering industries and the industrial sectors with training, with producing more trainees into the workforce. EKGTA itself didn't get established until 1966. So next year is our 60th year as a training centre, as a group training association. That the GTA part is important because that was what the Act was brought in to establish group training associations. So at one point back in the 60s and 70s, there were group training associations for lots of industry sectors all over the country, all over the UK. Every major town and city certainly had at least one or two. Now there are very, very few left, where we are now almost back to the same scenario as why these associations and training centres were established, because there is a huge skills shortage. So we're almost at the point, we've almost come full circle, and we're looking for the next chapter now.
Scientific Laboratory Supplies, SLS for short, is the UK's largest independent supplier of laboratory equipment, chemicals and consumables.
SLS was started in 1991 as there was a gap in the market for a more people-orientated business. As you can see in the wider market, and numerous different companies take a more impersonal route to customer service and customer support. We as a business identified a gap by taking that customer-centric approach to the laboratory market, and SLS was started in 1991 to deliver just that. We've grown over some 34 years now to become the UK's largest independent supplier of scientific products, with a very different approach to many other suppliers in the market. SLS works with a multitude of different industries and market sectors, so our customers can range pretty much anywhere where you'd expect to see a laboratory. That can be a secondary education school, all the way through to more complex and slightly more innovative environments like pharmaceuticals, biotechnology markets, food and beverage. But anywhere you'd expect to see a laboratory or laboratory products, they're our customers, and that's who we look to support in the market.
A growing skills shortage within the industry threatens productivity, exacerbated by Brexit-related workforce changes, reduced funding, and gaps in education and training.
The state of UK manufacturing at this present time isn't as buoyant as I'd expect. I think there's a few reasons for that. I would say predominantly with the change of government, I think a little bit of uncertainty has crept into the marketplace. I do see it improving, but I think it'll take a few months for the marketplace to jump back to where it should be. and the building sector we follow very closely, I think that once they become buoyant, our industry then becomes buoyant with it. The building industry for us is our market leader. Obviously, if new buildings are going up, even being temporary buildings, agricultural buildings, stuff like that, you will find that our industry goes up with it. And obviously then our market share of the industry goes up with it also.
Manufacturing traditionally, from this area, has been and remains one of the main engineering industries we have. Food manufacturing is a big part of this part of the world, but I'm old enough to remember the UK and Scotland as being a manufacturing powerhouse where we supplied steel and ships and products all over the world. Those days are gone. We are producing much less. With the global situation in terms of America possibly becoming more isolationist, that situation being unstable, I think we have to get back to manufacturing most of what we need here. If in particular food, we have to be food self-sufficient, we have to be energy self-sufficient, and that's going to drive a huge demand on manufacturing jobs and industry.
We're seeing the skills gap affect our industry in numerous different ways, primarily with academic customers, in that the students that are coming from secondary education into tertiary education don't necessarily have the basic practical skills to be able to do their courses and their degrees. That might be just from not having physical engagement with a pipette at A-level, and then having to learn the basics. But we're also seeing impacts due to Brexit and funding in academic institutions, which means we are seeing less lab technicians behind the bench, which is impacting research across biotechs and startups. And this skills gap is creating an issue with customers, or our customers not being able to do the research that we want. This is a problem for us as an industry because as a country we don't produce an awful lot like we used to. So this is something that we can really be proud of. We deliver world-leading science. We compete with the very best across the whole entire world. And as soon as we start underfunding and not providing the resources for our industry to do what we need to do, we are losing, very much a jewel in our crown in terms of how we can position ourselves on the world stage. So it really is something that I think the UK government needs to address. There's been some movement in that area, but I think failure to support that from grassroots, to coin a phrase, all the way through the spectrum of investment across the full scientific industry would be a really damning assessment of government policy, I think.
Reducing carbon footprints through sustainable manufacturing and locally sourced materials is not just a trend. It's a necessity for long-term success.
So sustainability for SLS is not just a box-ticking exercise. To us, it kind of really feeds into our values at SLS. So values of integrity and transparency and accountability. It's not always about being the best or winning at sustainability, because we know that that has to be a collective movement. You don't just kind of be the most sustainable or the best business at sustainability. But I think for us, especially when it comes to the carbon reporting, what we're doing internally, how we're trying to be better and more streamlined and have better logistics for our customers and actually deliver results for our customers, it is about being transparent and accountable to where we are in our sustainability journey. There's no point of saying that we're the best or the most sustainable company without actually telling anybody where we're at in our journey. And I think for us, it is just about that accountability and the trust we can build with our suppliers and our customers to actually say, look, this is where we're at, this is what we've done so far, and these are some key achievements. But also, this is the journey that we've got to go on, and these are the things that we have set out to do and committed to do. And I think that builds so much more customer trust than just saying flat out in absolute terms that we're the most sustainable or we're the best kind of thing. So
with sustainability, and especially with the move now towards zero carbon footprint and elements of green manufacturing, we are striving towards that. It will take time to incorporate, because obviously there's certain elements of manufacturing where we can't actually do that yet. But as soon as innovations come along where we can do them certain processes, we will certainly be looking at that. From a transport point of view, we are looking into electric vehicles for staff, and we're also looking at electric trucks. Until that comes about and it becomes cost sustainable, then once it is, we have no doubt that we will switch to a greener environment for manufacturing. We would always like to see the UK government do more to make us more sustainable. I think that at some point it will come to the top of their agenda where they'll realise that without creating that sustainability, that British manufacturing will come to a standstill. So I'd like to think, yes, the British government will be looking in areas to help us. Manufacturing for the UK, I think, is absolutely a vital part of Great Britain. Without it, if we become stagnant and stop manufacturing, I feel that Great Britain will no longer be great. I actually think that it will be a case we will increase manufacturing levels, and you will find once we do that, the whole of the British economy will reflect it and everybody gets a better standard of living and better living conditions.
Apprenticeships provide hands-on experience, bridging the gap between education and industry needs, ensuring a skilled workforce for the future.
The government's role in addressing the skills crisis or the skills shortage is pivotal, and it starts from school, in my opinion. I think it's almost too late to be encouraging people into engineering or any other sector when they are 17, 18 or 19, because they've already been educated down a particular path. I think it starts very early. High school, certainly, I would say, is where it should start. That's when I think the government's support would go a long way to introduce just the concepts of apprenticeships, the concept of life after school, the concept of engineering, of construction. You know, we're biased because we only deal with engineering, but we're aware that there's other options. But it has to start through schools, and the schools try. We work with them quite closely, and I know the schools try under difficult circumstances to, for example, invite us in to do talks and visits and that kind of thing. But it's a very uneven process. It depends particularly on the larger schools having the resources and the time to do it.
Typically they'll be doing a modern apprenticeship here. They'll run through downstairs their performing engineering operations at level 2. Here they'll gain 8 units, 3 being mandatory: health and safety, reading engineering drawings, working efficiently and effectively in a working place. And then they'll do 5 non-mandatory units. But they must be 5 units, and they must be picked by the company relevant to what they're going to be doing in the workplace when they leave here. And then they'll undertake their NC, and that will be in engineering systems. That's also a mandatory part of the modern apprenticeship. And they'll go on and do their SCQF level 7 and engineering. Now that can be broken up into 3 different pathways: pathway A, pathway B, and pathway C. And from there, we'll pick their units relevant to what they'll be doing in the workplace.
To tailor the needs of the programme with apprentices, again, it all depends on what the employer is looking for. If the employer is looking for an electrical maintenance apprentice, and that's what the apprentice wants to take that path, then the qualification is designed according to what the employer and the apprentices are looking for. So if it's an electrical maintenance qualification, then we'll put them through the electrical maintenance. If the employer is looking for mechanical apprentices, then we'll take them through the mechanical pathway. Apart from the apprenticeship, we also do standalone qualifications. For example, a level 3 only qualification. Majority of the employers who do the level 3 only qualification are lift engineers or, for example, injection molding engineers. For that, the pathway is clear. Injection molding, depending on, with injection molding, the pathway and the qualification is clear, and just 6 units they have to do. With regards to lift engineers, it depends on what type of lift engineers they want to be, whether they want to be service engineers or whether they want to be repair engineers. So depending on the needs of the employer, that's how we decide on which qualification best fits the apprentices or the learners.
Though some legislation has been put in place to push for greener production methods, the government has a lot more space to implement better policies and grants that further incentivise the transition to net zero.
In terms of what the government can do in the UK, because there is a big sustainability skills gap, I know there is more education happening at a younger age for like young people in universities and schools around climate change and climate action and sustainability in general. And I think that's something which should be carried on. But I also think it should be something that not just government should be encouraging in like curriculum, but also businesses should be encouraging at every level. So regardless of whether you're a business that's a completely digital agency or a distributor or a manufacturer, having people with roles that have remits of sustainability in and having to think about sustainability can embed it into business. That's the business perspective. From a government perspective, lots of businesses find it hard to do that if they're already established and they do have a sustainability skills gap. So if there's any kind of funding for that kind of education or even funding for like grants to get renewable energy or to source solar panels and things like that for people's businesses if they're on site and have, or in a business park like we are, I think that could really help. But it is the educational side of things because people do shy away from sustainability a lot because just think, oh, I don't know anything about that. I'll let somebody else that feels like they know what they're doing handle it, when actually it could be everybody's job and it could be everybody could have a greener role in a sense, if you like.
Brexit has really made a massive hit on British economy, as well as the pandemic. We still haven't recovered from that. And I think it'll be a few years yet until we do actually recover fully from that. But I think that we're on the right track. It's just a few things that need to be addressed from within geopolitical elements. I think that the element of finance and how the economy actually grows, I think within a few years we should be back to full manufacturing levels, if not improved.
Yeah, there's a number of challenges in the landscape at the moment. I'm sure everyone has experienced price rises of energy, of food, of clothing, of materials, of everything. Basically, that's how the economy has been for the last couple of years. That impacts our ability to invest further. You know, the more we spend on day-to-day running of the operation, buying steel, which we buy a lot of because the trainees use that for welding and cutting and shaping and moulding, that's expensive. The more we spend on that, the less we have left as a contingency to invest back in and grow and develop. But we are a non-profit organisation, so we don't have shareholders. We don't have anyone taking profits out of the business. So every penny that we generate remains within the association itself.
The rising costs imposed upon businesses nowadays is a huge challenge for us, especially with the business model that we have, which puts so much focus on all the valued added proposition that we give the customer. It's very important that we stay competitive in the market and we make sure that our products are competitively priced. And every time we look at a budget, we expect further pressure on the business model. So it's about prioritising where our focus needs to be and make sure that we budget accordingly for it. As a business, we strategise over a 5-year plan. So the benefit of doing so allows us to be a lot more agile and reactive when these things hit us as a business, because we're thinking further ahead rather than the next quarterly annual general meeting or appeasing shareholders on a short-term cycle. So by putting foundations in place over a much more protracted timescale, when these things impact us, it's mitigated significantly by our long-term objectives, making sure that we are a lot more stable to react to any short-term measures that are impacted.
Innovation is a massive part of what makes the industry unique. Advancements in automation, AI, digitalisation and sustainability are what keep it pushing forward.
Without innovation, Alliance will stand still. Everybody we compete against all pretty much knows the basics of how to construct and manufacture a roller shutter door. You have to have certain innovations to make yourself stand out from other manufacturers. We think that we do that, and we will progress and keep the innovation going along with our trade partners and our trade suppliers. And I think as long as we do that, Alliance will grow and eventually be at the level we want Alliance Industrial Doors to be at. Without good innovation, British manufacturing will become dormant. That has a lot of knock-on effects within industry, within society. I think that we really need to look at getting British manufacturing back to the levels we used to be in the 50s and 60s. And I think that there are people now that are looking and getting us back to those levels where our industry was the best. We was the best in the world, and there's no reason why we can't be the best in the world again.
Innovation to us is about adapting to the changing. We're really a mirror of the industry itself. So we have to innovate to keep up with the outside industry, of course, where the apprentices and the trainees are going to go into. So that means we have to adopt new technologies here. For example, 3D printing is something that we've recently got involved in. The more technological or high-tech side to engineering, we have to keep up with that to a level. So we're constantly innovating here on a technology front, innovating in terms of our practices and our methods and how we deliver training is happening now. We're in a real period of change in that, where we're trying to cut out the wastage and maybe the inefficiencies of some of the training programs. Use technology like AI as a research tool. We encourage the trainees to use AI as a research tool. We obviously don't encourage them to use it as a cheating tool or something to write their papers with. But if we would encourage them to use things like AI to develop their knowledge, and we incorporate that into some of the training that we do here. So innovation is more. I hate to say that we're more reactive on that front, but that is our position. We have to be reactive to innovation and be aware of what's going on out in the wider industry.
Innovation to SLS has been paramount to our growth. As you can see in this brand new facility that we've got, we've innovated from a sustainability element. So we've got lots of solar panels which allow us to put back to the grid. It allows us to have a really sort of carbon efficient footprint at this facility, but that doesn't work if we're not able to innovate and start driving more productivity in the site as well. So we've invested in warehouse management systems, automation systems, which allows us to expedite customer orders to get product out to customer a lot more effectively. But as a business, culturally, we've always wanted to innovate, and we have this idea that innovation happens at every stage, and every single person in the business can contribute to that. Whether it's small innovations in an operating procedure that allows us to streamline a task, that's something, and we believe those small innovations can add up collectively to make big improvements, and that's something we've always wanted our staff to be able to do, is to come forward with suggestions. We have an open board policy. We believe the people at the coalface will be the future of driving those innovations, and it's those suggestions and making sure people have the capability to vocalise them and make them visible is how we continually drive innovation at SLS.
We maximise our efficiency really going back to the design of this building. Really from the start we wanted to make sure walking distance were limited, the layout was correct, we didn't have congestion in certain parts. We actually invested in our automation as well to reduce that manual labour and that walking distance. We use a huge amount of data nowadays to forecast, but also we look at measuring our own productivity and efficiencies. And really, finally, we collaborate quite widely throughout the business. So making sure our procurement team know what's coming in, and also from customer services, have we got any specific customer spikes coming through.
I envisage Alliance in the next 10 years to have substantial growth. I think with initial investment from the company, as well as help from our trade suppliers and trade partners, I would like to think that in the next 10 years we will have doubled in sales, we'll have doubled in size. I think at this minute in time we'll be looking for new premises within the next 2 to 3 years. Obviously with growth comes growing pains, but I think that we have a good group of talented employees that have the vision and the want to get bigger and to get better.
I see EKGTA developing in terms of capacity. I think we've reached our capacity on this site. So the natural progression would be to establish other sites, perhaps along the central corridor of Scotland, specifically targeting industry sectors. There's a particular skills shortage in many industry sectors, but one in particular is the energy sector. When you look at renewables, and the energy infrastructure. So one of those additional centres or sites may be focused on that. Another site may be focused on more of a marine and oil and gas, a traditionally Scottish industry. So these are just plans at this moment in time, with an eye on next year being our 60th year. I think we might be in the position to announce something quite exciting on that front. So yeah, that would set EKGT up for the next 60 years. I won't be around. It will be someone else's job at that point. So I'm keen to leave a legacy of growth after me.
SLS has developed over the last 30 years to this point from a very small acorn into the business that you see before you today. The challenge for the next 30 years is how do we retain everything that's made us successful for the first 30 years, growing to be what is now a considerable group. We've invested in new market areas, we've invested in a number of businesses, and our growth has been delivered both through market share growth, new market entrance, but also acquisitions. So we are looking to continue on the acquisition trail to find businesses that suit our business model that we can integrate. That also looks at things like servicing. So not only do we provide the product, we need to make sure that we can provide all the service capabilities that a customer needs to make sure they can ensure the longevity of product. But everything from manufacture all the way through to distribution is part of our core strategic objectives. So it's just to make sure we don't lose what we've achieved over the last 30 years that make us who we are and how we differentiate in our market space, but how we can take that to grow for the next 30 years by exploring new opportunities and expanding that as part of our core strategic objective.
UK manufacturing is evolving, facing both challenges and opportunities. By focusing on sustainability, skills development and innovation, the sector can secure a strong and prosperous future.